I call the Honourable Member Brendan Horan. Tēnā koe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Vote Health. I welcome the government's move to fund doctors' visits for children under 13. It is required, urgently. However, the detail of the implementation requires scrutiny. For under 6-year-olds, parents find that doctors' visits are not truly free, but still incur significant charges. And sir, how many parents understand that New Zealand's children will have to wait another 13 months before free doctors' visits come into effect? The legislation is required immediately. How many children will suffer in the next 13 months because of this delay? We all agree that there should be free medical care for children under 13, and I call upon this government to advance the legislation to come into effect before the House rises on July 31st. Sir, I welcome the move to extend paid parental leave to 18 weeks, but again, parents will have to wait nearly 2 years for the 18 weeks to apply. I turn to education. Now, sure, money has gone in, but most of it is being used to fix leaky buildings and to recreate a restructuring. Executive teachers, executive principals. But where is the planning for 2020 in this budget? Stephen Joyce has been quoted as saying that ultra-fast broadband will revolutionise the way we trade, the way we operate, the way we communicate, and he's right. But sir, the reality is New Zealand is seriously lagging behind the rest of the world on 2 fronts, planning and infrastructure. We need UFB immediately. Sir, where in the budget is there money to upskill our children, young people in existing workforces and provide us with the digital literacies that are required? We are fast moving into a world of predictable computing, wearable computing, quantum computing, where computers will mimic and synthesise information in seconds, and that currently takes months at the moment. Retail, as we know it, is changing dramatically. We are moving from a world where the consumer goes to the market to where the market goes to the consumer. Thousands of jobs will be lost, but thousands more will be created. Where is the identification and planning of the skills and competencies of children, young people in the existing workforces to operate and to face these challenges? Sir, by 2020 we will have 3D printers, just like we used to have fax machines. They will be ubiquitous. There's a word for you. Sorry, sir. Mr. Mallard I was referring to. And manufacturing as we know it today will end. We need money in the budget so that New Zealand businesses can compete in the new world that is coming. Our workforce needs these skills and competencies, and so do we. So where is the plan? I turn to housing. And in the budget, the shame of housing is Christchurch. It is a stain on the soul of New Zealanders that the people of Christchurch are still suffering. Last week I met a couple, 70 and 74 years old, who are still living after 3 years in unhealthy conditions because of the bureaucratic failure of the EQC and Southern Recovery. This couple had their first claim turned down, sir, because inspectors were too lazy to lift the carpets. So a 70 and a 74-year-old had to do it themselves. Then they paid over $20,000 for private engineers to find that the concrete flooring slab had cracked, that the waterproof membrane was breached, promoting an osmotic effect, lifting the water up into the house. How can these people still be suffering after all this time? And they are still fighting for fairness. The truth is that there is a complete lack of accountability in Christchurch. Who is accountable for the bungling bureaucracy that has forced people in Christchurch to live in squalid and unhealthy conditions for over 3 years? Who is the person responsible for holding up the checks to the people in need? Who is the person responsible to ensure that work done meets the required standards? Who is responsible for Southern Recovery's lowball settlement offers? Who is responsible for Mobi guidelines, which were supposed to provide uniformity for reinstatement? However, these guidelines actually breach the Building Act because they provide for a lower level of repair and reinstatement than that Act requires. Sir, the citizens of Christchurch have been treated with contempt. We need an urgent inquiry into building practices and into billing by contractors. I know of jobs being overcharged. Here's an example: $200 worth of materials, $600 worth of labour, and finally being invoiced to EQC for over $15,000. Sir, added to that, the government is saving money off the backs of suffering New Zealanders, breaching trite law by operating to Schedule 3 Clause 9 and substituting this clause of the EQC Act ahead of the primary definition, which is to reinstate homeowners to a similar condition as when new. Now, trite law requires that an act must be read in its entirety, but EQC are reading and operating Schedule 3 Clause 9 in isolation. Sir, in Christchurch we need accountability, and we need it now. Mr. Speaker, I turn now to vote parliamentary services. Recently I've received information that raises real questions about the use of parliamentary funding by a party. I'm writing to Mr. Speaker asking that the Parliamentary Service investigate these matters and report to him. There is a clear precedent for this when in December 2001 the then General Manager John O'Sullivan reported to the Speaker on the Alliance Electorate Liaison Unit. That report swept aside any uncertainty that might have existed and clearly stated the rules. And, sir, the Leader of New Zealand First cannot claim to be ignorant, but in the past 18 months has ignored the rules.
Order.
Regardless.
Order. Order. There's a point of order. Richard Prosser.
The government's allocation of funding to for various means and the use of that funding subsequent to it being allocated has nothing to do with the government.
The member will sit. The member in opening talked about vote parliamentary service, and that's what he's on, and he can continue in that vein. I'm listening very carefully to what he's saying. That comes under Speaker's rulings, so I'm inviting Brendan Horan to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good to see you had a voice there, but shame he doesn't have a vertebrae. Sir, regardless, he's deliberately...
Order. Yes, order. Now, the member, that is completely out of order. That's an attack on the integrity of a member of this House. The member withdraw and apologise for that comment.
I withdraw and apologise for that comment.
Brendan Horan, continue.
Thank you, sir. Sir, he has deliberately withheld information from the board of the New Zealand First Party. The New Zealand First Party...
Point of order, Andrew Williams.
Order 117. A member, personal reflection, a member may not make an imputation of improper motives against a member and offensive reference to private members' affairs. Standing order number 117.
Look, I know that this is a very interesting subject. This is about the spending, not about the person. And we're in a debate on parliamentary vote service, and anything to do with the appropriation and the way that money has been appropriated, how it has been used and how it has been spent is a matter for debate. And that's what we are on now. So Brendan Horan will continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The New Zealand First Party is using taxpayer-funded computer software for party political purposes, such as campaigning and fundraising. The program, codenamed Vanguard,
Barbara Stewart.
Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Horan is transgressing Standing Order 117, making a personal reflection against a member. Or
No. The member has talked about a party. He hasn't mentioned any individual in this matter. And 117, if we look at 117, it says a member may not make proper motives against a member. An offensive reference in a member's private affairs or the personal reflection against a member. I'm listening very carefully about this, and the member must keep focusing on appropriation parliamentary service, the use and appropriation of that money and any concerns that the member may have if that's the way that his debate wishes to continue. Brendan Horan.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Andrew Williams, point of order.
Point of order. The Speaker has, in the last 2 weeks, on numerous occasions, advised members that if they have any issue in this regard, it should be referred in the normal manner through the Privileges Committee or other official channels. Should not be raised in this House. The Speaker has made that ruling on numerous occasions. We would like that to be upheld.
Order, Mr. Speaker.
No, well, before the member will sit. That may well be the case, that there is a referral to the speakers, but This is a debating chamber, and members in this House have freedom of expression, freedom to express their views. And I'm listening very carefully to this, and I'll ask the member to focus on vote parliamentary service. And as I've mentioned before, it's about the appropriation of the money and the use of that money, and the member shouldn't bring into account the integrity of any member of this House. All members are honourable members, and I'll ask the member to focus on that. Brendan Horan.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Vote Parliamentary Services. The New Zealand First Party is using taxpayer-funded computer software for party political purposes such as campaigning and fundraising. The program, codenamed Vanguard, is a constituent relationship management system which stores the personal details of voters and is used for mass mail-outs. Other political parties have these programs too.
Point of order, Barbara Stewart.
This program has not been launched. It is not part of it.
That's not a point of order. That's not a point of order. I'll ask members on points of order that they have to be relevant to the matter. That's not a point of order. Brendan Horan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Other political parties have these programs too, but they are funded by the parties themselves and operated outside of Parliament. New Zealand First paid tens of thousands of dollars out of the Leader's budget to develop this software and has their parliamentary staff working to run the program for election year. This is a clear breach of parliamentary service guidelines. An internal party strategy document dated 19th of March 2014 states under the heading Funds, campaign fund request, first 2 weeks April, self-funding after initial distribution, followed by use of Vanguard appeals to focus groups. A memo to the party board by President Anne Martin, dated 10th of March 2014, states the Director of Operations canvassed the use of Vanguard computer program, suggests board advised of its uses, including Candidates College program as well. This use of parliamentary resources for fundraising, appeals and political campaigning is more than questionable, especially from that party which promised in the last election a fair go. The public have a right to know what their money is being used for and whether it is being used legally. A company called Lone Star Market Research was registered on 1st of August 2012. The company's sole director is New Zealand First Director of Operations in Parliament and is a member of the party's campaign committee. The company was set up with the intention of conducting political activity for New Zealand First. New Zealand needs an assurance from parliamentary service and the leader of New Zealand First that Lone Star Market Research has not received 1 cent of taxpayer money, nor had the use of parliamentary resources. The New Zealand First...
Order. There's a point of order from Barbara Stewart.
Mr Speaker, this information is totally incorrect, just fantasising, and while I realise it's a wide-ranging debate...
I don't need any help. I've indicated that anything relating to vote parliamentary service is in order. And if the member ties that into vote parliamentary service, that, whether it's wrong or right, is a matter for debate. This is a debating chamber. It's not to me to judge on the accuracy of the information that's being presented. So long as it ties into vote parliamentary service, it is in order. Brendan Horan has 1 minute remaining.
Vote parliamentary service. The New Zealand First Party membership secretary, present at board meetings and recorded in the minutes of those meetings, is paid by parliamentary service for a full-time out-of-parliament support role in the New Zealand First office in Bank Street, Whangarei. This is a clear conflict of interest. This paper trail leads down the pathway to inappropriate use of public monies, serious conflicts of interest, secrecy and a lack of transparency and accountability, all from a party that purports to hold everyone else to task. There seem to be clear breaches of the Speaker's directions on provision of services to MPs and parties. Staff would seem to be in breach of the Parliamentary Service Code of Conduct. I call upon the leader of that party to open his leader's budget accounts to the scrutiny of the Speaker first and then the public of New Zealand.
I call the Honourable Chris Tremaine.
Point of order.
Point of order, Brendan Horan.
Thank you, sir. I seek leave to table an email received 6th of May 2014 stating facts re Vanguard.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? Yes. There is objection. Order.
Point of order. Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Brendan Horan.
I seek leave to table the minutes from the 2nd of March 2013 New Zealand First Board meeting.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? Yes. There is objection.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Now, how many points of order do you have?
Oh, well, there's a number.
Just order. Look,
I have three more,
one moment.
Mr. Speaker.
Look,
they're important.
One moment. Look, points of order to be heard in silence. I'm asking the member, how many points of order are you intending to bring forward?
Three more, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Brendan Horan, point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a New Zealand First memo to electorates mid-July.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there an objection? Yes. There is objection. Point of order, Brendan Horan.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a report to the board by Anne Martin, 10th of March 2014.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there an objection? Yes. There is objection.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order,
I seek leave to table a report of a strategy meeting, 19th of March 2014, use of Vanguard for fundraising.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there an objection? Yes. There is objection. I'm calling the Honourable Chris Tremaine.
Mr. Speaker, it gave me huge pleasure to return to Hawke's Bay after